Edward Fortune. Publicly, I've been calling myself the New Jersey Weedman for like the last 15 years. And basically because I am a legalizer. I've always been a legalizer. I always thought that marijuana should be legal. I'll get into it a little bit, you know, go back even to where I smoked my first joint. But I've always felt that we the people want to smoke marijuana, and the government shouldn't have the ability to stop us from smoking marijuana based on just the civil liberties aspect. So I've always engaged in civil disobedience, and you know, over the years I've gotten, we'll say, kind of famous for calling myself the New Jersey Weedman, engaging in civil disobedience acts. I mean, my public slogan is like, fuck the law, smoke it anyway. But I tell you, in the last 2 years, 3 years or so, I think there's been more movement towards legalization than in the 30 years I've even thought about it. You know, basically like the last 3 years, you had, you know, Washington, California, and Colorado had it on the ballot. California said no to their Proposition 19, basically because of the tax issues. But in the last 3 years, you know, we've had 2 states that actually have voted yes. We've had 1 state that voted no. You got 20 other states, including the state of New Jersey, who now has at least medical marijuana as legal. You know, there's a bunch of individual communities around the country also that have, you know, certain medical marijuana laws. And to me, this is like a huge step. You know, in the 90s, I was a weirdo for running around talking about legalizing marijuana, and I really feel like now I'm more a hero than the zero. You know, I can remember, you know, practically people crossing the street so they couldn't get my flyer if I was standing outside passing out flyers somewhere. You know, now if it's got a weed leaf on it, people grab it. I don't even have to, you know, shove it down people's throats anymore. If I stand out in public just like this with a flyer and they can see a weed leaf on it, they just grab it, you know. Whereas, you know, times have so changed. You know, they have so changed from the 90s. Sarah, she just left out of here. She told me she used to crank call my house, you know, because I used to have a phone number. I used to post signs up, legalize weed, and have a phone number so people could call my house, and I had an answering machine there. You know, when the internet basically first started, that's how I got my name, New Jersey Weedman, by the way, because it was like my first AOL name. You know, New Jersey Weedman. And then I got a website. My website's been existing since 1997. You know, so it's actually huge. Every single thing from that first web page I made is on that site still to this day. You just gotta find it if you really look for it. But I changed the homepage out. But the whole idea of calling myself NJ Weedman, getting a website, njweedman.com, was all, I should say, a gimmick, but it was all a way of getting public awareness. Because at the time, I felt like I was in a world where there was very few people speaking out. Yeah, you had Normal speaking out, you had High Times magazine speaking out, but there were very few individuals that spoke out. And, you know, I always thought you need a Martin Luther King of marijuana. You know, you need a Malcolm X of marijuana, a Cesar Chavez of marijuana. You need that individual person who, you know, you can identify with as opposed to an organization. I don't know. I think it was my mother's upbringing. I blame it all on my mom. You know, my mom actually put that in me to be an individual. And when it came to the marijuana issue, I just felt so right. I still feel right. And I felt that the law was wrong, not me. And I felt that other people out there should feel the same way. Which is why I constantly advocated jury nullification. And I could probably be called jury nullification man if I really wanted to, because I've been advocating jury nullification since the 90s too. And again, people thought I was crazy then. Actually, how many people here actually know what jury nullification is? Did you know it before you heard of me? Okay, that's good. All right, and you totally understand it. So now, think about it now, the year 2014. How can the government get a conviction if a person argues that the law is wrong? You got 14 people on a jury. I don't think you can find a choir in the most Orthodox church that, you know, that you would get an unanimous choir to say he should go to jail for having marijuana. So on a jury of your peers, I think there would always be one, more likely 5 or 6. Nowadays, any opinion poll shows about 75% of the people, 3/4 of the people think that marijuana should be legal. So why would anybody take a chance on just signing a plea bargain and going to jail as opposed to facing a jury of your peers? You know, go for it.
Can I answer?
Yeah, go for it.
Well, I think one of the problems is, and you know this better than me, but one of the problems is our lawyers and our public defenders and everybody, and our judges as well, the whole way the law, they supposedly take an oath and uphold the law. They don't uphold the Constitution of the 10th Amendment, but they tend to uphold the law that says you can't nullify a law, that you have to uphold the law, but they don't understand the law of the Constitution. There's a difference. You know, and so don't judge a jury. They're afraid that they're going to lose their bar, right?
Yeah, no, you're right. Most lawyers, well, all the lawyers have taken an oath. They've taken an oath to uphold the law, and they've taken an oath to the Bar Association. The Bar Association is basically, over the years, has decided not to tell people about the right of jury nullification. There's a Supreme Court case also that says that they don't have to. It's called SPARF. SPARF, United States versus SPARF. It's like an 1898 case. But that case said that a person doesn't have to be told, or the jury doesn't have to be told their power to nullify a law. Now, if they're not told it, you know, you very rarely will find a judge or a lawyer saying that they can't do it, because they would be wrong. So you won't find a judge saying that, but they will argue that you can't tell a jury about your right to nullify. Now, in New Jersey, which I thought was unique, it's great that we have this, but very few people realize it. But if you ever read New Jersey Constitution, read the New Jersey Constitution. I'm talking about Article 1, Paragraph 6. It specifically says, in all indictments or prosecutions, the jury may be told the truth, and the jury may judge the law as well as the facts. Like, how clear is that? If you're allowed to tell the truth, and in my case, I've always felt that the marijuana laws were wrong, so okay, I want to tell the jury the truth. Okay, so telling the jury the truth, and my argument's always been, the law's wrong, not me. So the jury then has a right to judge the law. According to Article 1, Paragraph 6, it says the jury has a right to judge the law, this is one of the major issues with my last case that's before the New Jersey Appellate Court now. I think the New Jersey Appellate Court is going to rule in my favor too. But we live in one of the 13 or 14 states that actually has jury nullification built into our Constitution. Even though New Jersey's doesn't specifically say the word Constitution, I think it's Indiana, Kentucky, or I can't remember the other. There's 3 states that actually have the word jury nullification in their Constitution. And then just recently you had New Hampshire legislatively has added jury nullification to the mix. But I've always felt that jury nullification was a way we can end the war on drugs. Just by looking back at history, jury nullification has played a huge part in changing American laws in the past. You know, everyone cites the Fugitive Slave Acts of the 1850s, for instance. The Fugitive Slave Acts basically punished people for helping slaves escape. But if you were on a jury and you didn't believe in slavery either, and this poor guy up here, he's gone to jail, he's been arrested for helping slaves, you don't believe in the law either, so you would find him not guilty. So that was happening in the 1850s. It happened again during the alcohol prohibition, and same thing. You'd have a jury of 12 people, half of them drank liquor. And here's this poor guy, he's getting ready to go to jail for for alcohol. People stopped voting. People stopped voting to convict. So during the late 1920s and early 30s, there were very few alcohol convictions of people who took it to trial. It pretty much served as the backbone of breaking the prohibition. And I've been advocating that should happen now with the marijuana movement, the issue of legalization, that if it became part of the public conscience that you can just simply nullify a law by just saying not guilty. If a person gets caught and arrested, he knows that he can argue to the jury that the law is wrong. Hopefully, you have a jury of informed people that can also realize that they have a right to judge the law and say not guilty and save a person. Now, that said, I got lucky last year. It actually worked for me. I got a hung jury and I got found not guilty, 2 separate trials. But the one thing that kept happening to me, and it actually happened in 2000 also, was half of my jurors, when they were going through the jury selection, the jury pick, they would say things like, oh, I couldn't convict him, or no, I couldn't put anybody in jail for marijuana. You know, they would say things like that, and the prosecution would get rid of them. The judge would say, you know, well, you've already shown that you're not impartial. You have to be an impartial person. And people would get off the jury by saying things like that. And I used to feel like, wow, you just defeated. If you really didn't want to send me to jail, you should just kept your mouth shut and sat on my jury and said not guilty. You know, help me, save me. And these are the things I've been putting out on the internet for years. And like I said, it's been a theory, I guess. You know, but until I can actually say, like, you know, I did it and it worked for me, you know, because in 2000, you gotta remember, let me back up, let me start all over with that. In 1997, when I was first arrested, I was arrested and charged with conspiracy to possess marijuana by the Camden County Drug Task Force for a shipment of 40 pounds of marijuana from Arizona to New Jersey. That was my first bust. But that day, because I'd already known about jury nullification, when I got read my Miranda rights, anything you say and do can and will be used against you is basically what everybody remembers about well, everything has a reciprocal. And the reciprocal to that is everything you say and do can and will be used against you, or it could be used for you. And that's how I felt, especially I started realizing at the end of the 90s that the public opinion was definitely swinging towards legalization anyway. The same concept I had about people, you couldn't get acquired to convict you, so why would you be able to get a jury to convict you by arguing that the law was wrong? Well, when I first got busted, that was my logic, my thought. So I turned around and ran for office, formed the Legalized Marijuana Party, did everything I can to get the press involved to pollute my jury. That's how I felt. When my jury, I was busted in Camden County, I was mailing press releases to the Courier Post, the Burlington County Times. I wanted them to write, there's this guy named Ed Fortune. In fact, I didn't even put my name on things. I was calling myself the New Jersey Weedman. You know, I wanted my jury to know, hey, this is that guy. This is the, you know, I wanted that pothead on my jury to not say anything. But as it turned out, it took 3 years to go from that bust in 97 to my first trial in 2000. And there were members of the jury who knew exactly who I was as soon as they walked in. I mean, I wore a weed shirt. I made sure people knew. I thought I was going to win. I had one lady immediately said that she couldn't convict me, which was a mistake. They kicked her off. I had another lady who started crying, you know, during my opening statement because I had my kids sitting in the front row. And I said, if you guys send me to prison, when I get out, they'll probably be driving and I'll probably be a grandfather. Something like that I said, and this lady started crying. They stopped the trial. She got off the jury too. So I thought I was going to have a hung jury. And, you know, long story short, I actually took a deal. And I felt so mad at myself. I kicked myself. They told me I was going to get 3 to 6 months. I was facing like 20 years, and all of a sudden, for getting caught with 40 pounds of weed. So all of a sudden now, third day of trial, the prosecution thought I was going to win. I thought I was going to win. I thought I was going to get a hung jury. That's all I thought. I was going to get at least one person on the jury to feel my way. And the prosecution felt the same way at some point, so they offered me a deal. And for 3 years, I said I'd never take a deal. I was in the papers telling people I wouldn't take a deal. I had it on my, it wasn't even Facebook back then. I had it on my website, you know, fuck the law, I'm smoking it anyway. No jury's gonna convict me. I'm gonna get a pothead, you know, whatever. And then that day, the third day of trial, I went from going from a first-degree crime to the prosecutor practically begging me to take a deal. So I felt like I won, and I took the deal. I went to prison, and I regretted it ever since. They double-crossed me even on the deal, but I regret it from 2-3 days later. I regretted taking that deal, and it always frustrated me. And even when I went around talking about legalizing marijuana and using jury nullification, people who read about me also knew that I took a deal. That's why I said I kind of thought it was like, you know, like a theory kind of, because I didn't do it. I didn't go all the way. So it always bothered me that I didn't go all the way. And it just so happened, when the state arrested me again by accident on April 1st, 2010, April Fool's Day, to me, I looked at it as a chance to redeem myself, to do it all over again, to take it to trial. I got arrested on April 1st, April Fool's Day. You know, it took a couple days to get out of jail, to bail out. But at my press conference, I held a press conference. It was like deja vu all over again. I'm going to do it all over again. But at my press conference, you know, I said at the end of this case, the state of New Jersey is going to be the fool for having the nerve to arrest me, and I really felt that way. And here we are 4 years later. Yeah, I got a hung jury once. I got found not guilty once. I did get convicted of a simple possession charge. The judge got a little payback. I went to jail for a little while. But the one thing that did happen is I got to get an appeal going through. And my appeal before the New Jersey Appellate Court, the number one argument is I wasn't allowed to present my jury nullification argument. So I want to get that jury nullification argument in law. A lot of people don't understand when the appellate court makes a ruling or decision, it basically becomes law, becomes case law or precedent. There's very, very little jury nullification law in New Jersey. I think the appellate court, you know, when looking at my argument, everything I talked about, it had very little to do with marijuana. It was mostly constitutional arguments. And I think I'm going to win and set at least that issue of jury nullification being a lawful and legal way to defend yourself. I think it already was, but what happens is, like you were saying, the judges and lawyers block it. I mean, my biggest fight in my case was from the prosecutor and the judge. I mean, because imagine if I was a murderer and I killed somebody, and I argued, yep, I did it. They would all snicker and laugh, go, oh, he's going to jail. But because I got caught with weed, and I said, yep, I did it, and you need to get 12 people to think that I did something wrong. You know? In a room like this, if you were on a jury, I can pretty much say, in a room like this, how many of you would convict somebody if you were on a jury and somebody was on trial for marijuana? Nobody here, right? None. Even in the regular public, you know, we're all stoners or close to it or whatever you want to call yourself, cannabis consumers, whatever. We all believe in the use of marijuana here, so you're not going to find anybody. But in the public realm, if this room was just randomly 100 people in here, there'd still be 70 people that would think that marijuana should be legal. And again, it goes to the whole point of jury nullification. If it became part of our regular, everyday schooling and teaching, or even on the internet, man, just always kind of throw it to different people. I do. I've been doing it for years. Just educating people on jury nullification. We could end the war on drugs simply by polluting the jury with people who disagree with the war on drugs. You know, sure, you'll get your people who take a plea, and like I said, I took a plea one time, so I can't even knock people who take pleas, but I really do truly believe if you take your case to trial for a marijuana charge, if that's all you're charged with, and you argue to your jury that I didn't do anything wrong, the law's wrong, yep, I had it, I smoke weed every day, yep. At lunchtime, when we all break up and you smoke your cigarettes out the front door, I gotta go all the way across the parking lot and smoke my joint so that I don't get busted by the sheriff. That's actually what I said to my jury. You know, and of course, when they were outside smoking a joint, they were smoking their cigarettes, and I went walking by smiling, because you can't say nothing to them. I went walking by smiling. I knew they all knew, yep, he really is going to smoke a joint. When I came back in, I made a point to smile at everybody. You know, a nice slow smile. You know, they all knew I was baked. And then I got to talk again. I didn't act a fool. You know, I really felt that I was going to get a hung jury from my very first opening statement. Getting to, if you find yourself as a defendant, and all of you, any one of you can, you all smoke marijuana, you can end up with some conspiracy. Who knows, maybe your buddy over here's got a quarter pound of weed and he calls you on the phone and the phone's tapped, and next thing you know, you're in a conspiracy charge with this guy and this guy. You never even met that guy. That happened to me before. I got charged in a conspiracy with somebody I never even met. You know? So, and it all comes from the phones, and everybody uses phones now, everyone uses the internet. If you end up accidentally falling into somebody's investigation, you can end up with a conspiracy charge. And a conspiracy charge is worse than the actually getting caught with it, because you're just in a conspiracy. You don't need to possess it. You know, I actually, the time I went to prison, I didn't go to prison for the marijuana. They actually negotiated that out. I went to prison for got a 10-year sentence for conspiracy. This can happen to anybody in here without even having a large amount of marijuana. You can just be talking, and you know how you ever read the paper and you read they had this big drug sweep and 29 people got busted and this, that, and the other. Half of them didn't know each other. Half of them just bought their weed every Thursday or Friday from somebody, you know. And then the one guy, yeah, he's the one that gets the package from, you know, California or something. But the rest of them are all, they didn't know shit. But anyway, what I'm getting at is, if you ever find yourself in that situation, you can argue to the judge that you want to represent yourself. And when I say represent yourself, that doesn't mean you have to be by yourself. You represent yourself so that you can dictate the way your trial, your situation, your defense goes, how it can be formulated. Anybody here have ever had a case and you got a public defender that tells you what the fuck to do? Right. You can throw out his opinion simply by invoking certain federal cases like Beretta versus California, Green versus California. Both of those are Supreme Court cases where the defendant argued to the judge that they want to choose their own defense, they want to represent themselves, and they won. It's the law of the land. But never give up your Sixth Amendment right to assistance of counsel. That's what the Sixth Amendment says. It doesn't say you have a right to somebody to represent you and speak for you. It doesn't say none of that. It says you have a right to assistance of counsel for his defense. You know, being politically correct, it'd be his and her defense now. But in 1780, when they, you know, wrote the Bill of Rights, it was his defense. And to this day, if you invoke your right to assistance of counsel for his defense, what you're asking for is the public defender or the lawyer or whoever to assist you in your defense. And if your tactic and your defense is, I'm going to talk to the jury myself, I'm going to give my opening statement myself, and you're going to assist me with all the paperwork and all the objections and things like that, but I'm going to speak to the jury. You can demand that to your public defender or whoever, and I think it's a great tactic, because here's what happens. One, you know, the jury's mostly on the left side of the courtroom, the prosecutors to the left, and public defenders to your left, and you're farthest away from the jury, and you look like the criminal. You're sitting over there, you don't get to talk, and you just sit there, and they all judge you, and they hear what this guy says, and they hear what this guy says, the judge says this, and at some point, you know, they make a ruling. But what I'm saying is, the hell with all that. When it's time to give your opening statement, wait, even before that, when jury selection time comes, you get up, you ask the questions to the jury. You let them identify with you, let them hear your voice. Don't act scared, you know? Let them hear your voice. Wear a weed shirt, you know, right away. There's a bunch of people going to smile, you know, giggle. I know who likes me and who doesn't. I had this whole stereotypical weed look to me, so I can walk down the street and pick out weed heads. Whoever smiles at me, you smoke weed. You know, I can do that. But still, if you wore a weed shirt, anybody in here, if you wore a weed shirt to your trial, there'd be people in your jury who would kind of look at you funny. Someone would smile at you. You know, you might get some hand signs, 4, 2, 0, 2. You know, you get anything out of the jury. Well, you know, and over the last 2 years, there's been a couple people around the country who have done it. And it works. Because one, the jury stops looking at you as that criminal guy all the way over to the right side of the courtroom. First of all, you become, you're speaking. You're a human now. You're not the evil monster. You become that guy who says that the law is wrong. And that's what the jury trial is about. Because it's supposed to be a fight against the state, against you. The judge is supposed to be a mediator, but the most powerful entity in the courtroom really is the jury. They're the only ones that can send you to jail. Actually, the judge can't send you to jail. He can only do what the jury says or allows it. So you have to convince 12 people. I think, again, I can go anywhere and convince 12 people, or at least 2 or 3 of them. One of them is all I need, that you shouldn't send me to jail. And I think most people in here can speak that well. And you don't have to be a great speaker. I keep telling people too, the only people who speak legalese in court is the dickhead to the far left, the prosecutor, and the dickhead who sits next to you, the judge, the public defender. Sorry, if that's the wrong word to use, sorry. But that's how I call them all dickheads. Sorry. They are dickheads, all right? Yeah. Any lawyers in here? Sorry. I know, it'll be a whole room full. So tonight's the cool night, no lawyers though, it's a kid. But when you get up before the jury, you start speaking, you stop becoming the victim. I mean, you stop becoming the criminal defendant, you become the victim. Because everybody on the jury starts identifying with you. You become somebody's brother, somebody's sister, somebody's cousin. You're giving the opening statement. The prosecutor just gave his opening statement. He's like, this individual, in my case, he called me a charlatan. This charlatan is got caught with a pound of weed. He claims it was for himself. He claims it was for marijuana. He's a drug dealer. Blah, 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 blah. Right? Then I get up there and I go, no, I'm not a charlatan. Matter of fact, my issues are real. I have this condition and that condition, and, you know, I smoke marijuana every day. Yep, I got caught with a pound of weed. What was I supposed to get caught with? A nickel bag? You know, I called myself Weedman. I'd be embarrassed to have a nickel bag on me. And I said that. You know, I got a couple laughs then too. I said it's cheaper to have a pound of marijuana. If you went out every day and bought 1/8 of marijuana for 50 bucks, you know, come on, it's like 3,000 bucks at the end of the damn month. Whereas if you buy a pound of weed for like 1,500 bucks and, you know, you smoked a little every day, and, you know, so what? You shared it with your buddies. Hey, everybody comes to your house anyway, so what? Same thing with people who drink coffee. You can go to 7-Eleven every day and get a cup or 2 of coffee, and some people in here do that. Then there's other people, they buy the big 5 or 10 pound bag and they cook their own coffee, they put in a thermostat, and it's all cheaper and everything. Same thing with sugar. How many people smoke cigarettes and buy cartons? See, if I was a cigarette smoker, I would buy cartons because it's cheaper, you know, as opposed to going to Wawa or Skeets or whatever every day and buying a pack of cigarettes. The same thing with marijuana. This is what I argued to my jury. I actually had, Ken was in here, he was at my trial. I actually bought a 5 pound bag of sugar, I bought a gallon of milk, and I bought a carton of cigarettes. And this is my argument to the jury. And he has my pound of marijuana over there. But, you know, and my jury felt that. And again, these are the same arguments I keep telling people, like, come on, you actually can do it, even if you get caught with more than 50 grams. So what? The personal argument doesn't exist at a weight limit. You know, who's to say who smokes more? I'm just curious, how much do you smoke with the purple, Cheryl?
About a half a week.
About a half a week? All right, so if you get caught with a quarter pound, could you think you can argue that this is mine, like, for the month?
Sure.
You know, but technically, that anything over 50 grams is possession with an intent to distribute. And that's where the prosecution uses that as a hammer, where if you got a simple possession charge, you're not facing a lot of time, but you got a possession with intent to distribute charge, they use that as the hammer to force you to plead guilty to this, that, and the other. But like I'm saying, if you got caught with a quarter pound, you should argue to your jury. You should, first of all, you should say, I'm going to represent myself. Yeah, I need a public defender to assist me, as my Sixth Amendment says. I have a right to be assisted. And I'm going to argue to my jury that, yep, I had this quarter pound of weed, I smoke it every day. Matter of fact, again, the whole argument, I'm going to smoke at lunchtime. I smoked this morning on the way. Tonight, when you're going home and thinking about this case, and you're smoking your cigarette, I'll be smoking my joint. In the morning, I'm going to smoke a joint. And you know what? I'm telling you, man, it sounds funny, but people are going to identify with you. You become your brother, you become their brother, their sister, because they all know somebody like that. In fact, most people, when they identify with a pothead or a stoner, they like them. You know, how many people are like, I mean, I met this angry fucking pothead. Nobody meets angry potheads. Nobody, you know, we're all cool, we're laid back. That's half of our problem, we're too passive, you know? If we were aggressive, this war on us would not have lasted fucking 40 fucking years, you know?
Alcohol, they wouldn't say we're tough.
No, they started shooting each other. That's what happened with the alcohol prohibition is crazy. You know, Italians started shooting Italians, and Italians started shooting, you know.
How do you replace the money they're getting?
I would gladly pay a weed tax every year. I say taxation instead of incarceration? Hell fucking yeah. I got sentenced to 10 years for some weed that I'd much rather have paid for. You know, I would have paid that tax any day. Hey, yo, dude, every January you're a pothead, you're a stoner, you give us $500 and we'll give you a sticker. You know, I would do it. I'd do it for fishing license. If I was an electrician, I gotta renew my electrician certificates every year. Everybody pays for your driver's license. They're all taxes.
They are.
I would pay my weed tax every year. Make it April 20th.
No, I know what you're saying, but you're still making a quarter of the forfeiture laws are making them every year in the state. You're literally, the addiction is the money they're getting.
Well, no, but here's what would happen. Then you would also get a bunch of people who wouldn't pay their tax. So then they would get caught. You don't prosecute them criminally, you make them pay double the tax. You know, instead of paying $420, now you're paying $840 or something like that, you know?
If you're not a felony charge, you won't even get to a jury. So you're only dealing with a few people big enough to get in there. I'm talking about the entire business of arresting and forfeiture laws extends through even small busts. How do you replace that money? Because it's the only thing that's going to stop these guys
I think, you know, first of all, my pay grade ain't that high. But I think, you know, like I just said, a national tax, or you pay a tax. I mean, I'm telling you, a lot of, especially if you've been arrested for weed before. I mean, how many people in here have been arrested? You know, even like a simple possession case. Would you have rather had paid a tax? Or rather had a piece of paper saying that you could have it? I mean, I know a lot of people say, no, I'm not paying taxes. Trust me, I was in California last year, 2 years ago, and half the state voted no because Proposition 19 was a tax. It was legalizing weed, but it was taxing it. So half the people voted no. Even the stoners voted no. I myself been to prison before for weed, so I voted yes. But how many people would rather pay a tax than go to jail? You know, or even the hassle of getting arrested. You know, even if you don't go to jail, even these decrim stuff. I mean, I hear people talking about these decriminalization things, and you know, I'm wishy-washy on that because you still gotta go through the ringer. You know, you still have somebody trying to tell you you gotta go to rehab or something. You know, who's been in the rehab for weed?
What, playing sick?
It's been ordered to go. Who's been ordered to go to NA or AA?
Drug court.
Man, that is some bullshit. That happened to me before.
It's a research project is what it is.
Yeah.
It's ongoing.
Well, it's actually it's just a straight waste of time because we're not addicted. We're not, you know, we make our choices. This, that, and the
It's
other.
a jobs program. Every one of these people, from the guy who urinates in the cups, getting $50,000 each. This is not going away. What you're doing is perfect, clogging up the system, getting freed by juries. Very important stuff. It is the way to do it.
Right.
But there is a reality of this balance of how you replace this money. The state will go under. They will literally go bankrupt without this money they're getting from seizures. All of these charges, billions of dollars.
I think again, I gotta go back to we potheads, cannabis consumers would voluntarily pay taxes. Look what's going on in Colorado right now. No one's complaining about that 28% tax. Imagine you put 28% tax on a Hershey bar. You'd have a riot.
You are doing heel stuck there. They actually couldn't convict anymore there. That's why it came about.
Well, I think it's here too. I mean, we got Christie blocking everything, you know. Besides the George Washington Bridge, he's blocking everything.
He is.
You know, and hey, look, I'm not even gonna go there with the fat boy jokes, but hey, man, come on, he needs to smoke a joint and chill. I know that. And I got in trouble for that. No, I was mailing him joints for a long time. I used to, every time I saw him on TV, I used to write a damn letter. You fucking fat ass motherfucker.
Did anybody invite
And I was mailing the joint, huh?
He mail him too. He never gets back.
No, but I would actually mail half a joint to him all the time. And depending on what I heard him talking about or whatever what my letter said, sometimes I would CC other people. Ken, did you ever get a CC package from me? No. Because I used to CC people. Like if I was mailing a letter to the governor and I was putting a joint in there, I had to CC 10 people. All 10 people got a joint. Yeah.
I got a copy of your book.
Oh yeah, my book, Public Enemy number 420.
Sorry.
Chapter, my chapter, I smoked my first joint, page 82, came with a joint on page 82. So, okay. Now, you know what used to happen, Ken? Since you brought that, I wasn't even going to think of that. I used to get a random book order from like Cleveland, Ohio, one book. Then like 3 days later, that same address would order like 4 books. They're like, oh shit, you get a joint with the book? Fuck the book. I'm ordering a joint. And the book was only like 20 bucks. And hey, some places, a $20 joint is good, you know? A high dollar joint, a good high. So it actually worked out. I was sending Cali Bud too, so it was like, it was all good. But all that even went back to my whole civil disobedience attitude. I've always had this whole civil disobedience thing, and all right, it's against the law to mail a joint, so fuck the law. I mailed the joint anyway. And yeah, I got in trouble a couple times for mailing things, or at least suspected of it, but I still had that whole thing that, you know, compliance, like if you comply with the law, you're accepting the law. And I don't know, I've never complied with the marijuana laws. I think maybe 16 or 17, you know, I would feel like, yeah, that's against the law. No, I can't do that. But then, I don't know, I went in the Army or something. Somewhere in that time frame, I just like, fuck the law. The law is so wrong. And anybody who would want to hear me, I said it to them. And I was just a weird weed dude then. But again, times have changed. You know, times have changed. Now it's all positive. You know, I feel, oh man, dude, you were talking about that for 20 years. Times have caught up. You know, it's perfect. That's one way that I think that we can change. 2 ways. I think we can change the law. one, you know, the whole jury nullification thing. People can stop convicting. People can stop taking deals. People can argue, and it will clog the system up. That's one way. Just taxation, I think, is another way. And then just legislatively, you know, I'd shake Mr. Scutari's hand today. You know, is he going to be here this weekend? I'd shake Mr. Scutari's hand because he, you know, put forth the bill to legalize marijuana. He's gotten the Prosecutor Association to agree. I think that's huge. You know, that would have been a wet dream for me in 1999. You know, now prosecutors are talking about it, judges are talking about it. I had a judge on the bench as he was talking to me tell me that, hey, I think the law should change too, but until they do, you know, blah, 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 blah. But just the fact that he said it on the bench would have been unheard of 20 years ago.
Who is he?
That was Judge Irenas. He's a federal judge, first district, Camden District.
Scutari.
Scutari is the senator from where? Union County?
Union County. Yeah.
Union County. And he also sits on the Prosecutors Association, so it seems apparent that he convinced the other prosecutors to come out with a statement 2 weeks ago. What was that, about 2 weeks ago? The last week, the Prosecutors Association came out saying, you know, yes. And all this is perfect. You know why? Because then we got Christie saying, not while I'm in office. You know, he's going to end up standing there by himself. You know, we already see half of his cabinets resigned, but that was because of Bridgegate. Wait until Cannabisgate comes around. And I think, I think it is. First of all, if he actually stays in the race for running for president, I know he hasn't announced it, but if he actually stayed in it, first of all, this whole Bridgegate thing has seriously undermined him, but his cannabis policies has made him unelectable by most of the West Coast anyway. I think most of the West Coast, just on the marijuana, his marijuana policies, that would limit his electability. And I've thought that his cannabis policies should have been exposed, you know, to the utmost. And because of cases like Ken was talking about, the Wilson case, Brian Wilson confronting Christie on that CNN show and put his whole cannabis policies out to the whole country. I mean, there's people in Washington State saying, hell no, I'd never vote for Christie. You know, there are people in, you know, places out west. You know, so I don't even think he doesn't have a shot at, you know, I don't know how much money some of the right-wingers would throw at him at some point. But right now, if he can get through the Bridgegate, he's still there. And I still think he's the biggest impediment, not just to bridges, but to the cannabis movement too, if he actually gets to a national level. He's a drug war prohibitionist, and he hasn't given up. In fact, I think we've already won the war on pot. Who else here thinks that? I feel we won. The other side hasn't given up yet, hasn't quit, but I think we've won. We've definitely won the people. You know, more than 75% of people think that marijuana should be legal, and the laws are wrong. So we're there. Legislatively, and there's also judicially. Court cases, again, court cases can change laws. You know, major change in this country has occurred through the courts. Brown versus Board of Education, you know, you can go to some of the older cases, Plessy versus Ferguson, Roe versus Wade. These are all major changes that happen because of court cases and because of the appeals courts and then ultimately the Supreme Court. So I've always championed arguing your case and arguing certain constitutional arguments, and several times trying to get a constitutional argument before the court. I've had cases dismissed. I mean, people used to think I was crazy, go somewhere and smoke a joint, you know, and they would just think I was just some crazy stoner. But I would be doing that so that I can actually have standing and get my argument before an appellate court and argue it up. Like,
How do you do that?
Well, here's what happened to me. Say I went to the State House in 2000. You remember that, Ken? I went to the State House in 2000. I had this whole idea then. Here's what my idea was. Scheduling arguments. The scheduling arguments say that you can have no medical marijuana acceptable in the United States. That's what the scheduling says. The classification as a Schedule 1 drug says you can't have it, it can't be used medicinally in the United States. It says United States. And it says about doctors, no doctor would prescribe it. Well, those two were happening in California and Arizona. They were part of the United States. So when I went to the State House in front of the State Assembly and I smoked a joint, I got arrested, no problem. They released me the next day, or later on that night. But then I started my whole legal argument. And my legal argument was New Jersey's 2C laws should be void for vagueness, due process arguments, because the scheduling issue is marijuana is factually wrongly scheduled. And I thought I could have brought a good argument. Today, it seems like perfectly logical argument, but in 2000, they were like, this crazy dude is in here arguing about some scheduling shit. Anyway, rather than let me have my argument, they dismissed the case. And I was like, what? If I'm driving down the street and I got a joint, I get prosecuted, this, that, and the other, I go before the entire state assembly and smoke there so I can have my legal argument, and they dismissed the case. So then I went to the Burlington County Courthouse and I had a press release and a press conference, and I smoked the joint there too. And then, again, the sheriff arrested me, and I went to court once or twice. But as soon as I started my arguments trying to get into the appellate court, they would dismiss my case. No, they would dismiss it. That's a win, actually, but I didn't want that. What I wanted was to argue the case in the appellate court to change law. And it happened numerous times to the point where I stopped smoking weed. Like, it's not working. That whole cannabis civil disobedience in public is starting to make me feel like, dude, you're not getting what you want out of this because they keep dismissing your case. It even happened at the Liberty Bell. I smoked weed at the Liberty Bell. Yeah, they arrested me. They did all this. I appealed it on legal constitutional grounds, and they dismissed it again. So what happened to me in 2012, or 2010 when I got arrested, yeah, it's happened numerous times. But when it happened to me, when I actually came from California and got arrested here in 2010, the prosecutor in that case, Mr. Luciano, he wasn't dismissing nothing. He really wanted to put me in jail. He wanted to fight and argue, and I fought and argued. Like I said, I already explained, I ended up with a hung jury once, a not guilty verdict, and I did get sentenced to a possession charge, which is my justification now for my legal argument to proceed through the appellate court. Just March 18th, I actually filed the argument, the brief on the appeal. And I had said in the beginning that the prosecutor was making a mistake from his point of view, to prosecute me, knowing that I have all these arguments, knowing that I've tried to get these arguments before the appellate court before. His prosecuting me did nothing the state got nothing out of it.
So they never even heard a word you said?
No, this is the first time I've actually got those arguments before the appellate court. In the past, I've always had my cases dismissed. And on one hand, I had people like, dude, you must be the greatest lawyer ever. All your cases are just, they didn't dismiss my cases because they were I was some great lawyer. They dismissed it because they didn't want the argument before the appellate courts. And I came off as the nutty guy, smoking weed everywhere.
If you're winning, you're so minute that you gotta be kidding me. And even legitimate stuff that goes in there doesn't come through.
Yeah,
so.
Well, this appeal now has the attention of plenty of lawyer organizations. The ACLU actually said that they may file an amicus brief on it.
Plus, you were using marijuana in the courtroom during the trial.
Oh, yeah.
And you told the jurors that.
Yeah, see, Ken was at my jury. Ken was at my trial. He knows. I stood up there and told him, hey, I'm getting ready to go smoke a joint. I came back in and the place was reeking. That again goes to 20 years ago. I don't think I would have done that. 20 years ago, You know, I don't know if there's any Republican types here, but 20 years ago, I would have thought those Republican types would want to hang me for that, you know? Coming in, smoking, smelling like weed at trial, disrespecting the whole system. Nowadays, nope. It doesn't come off that way. Nowadays, it's totally different. There's so much public acceptance, and you look at the system now as wrong. Everyone looks at the system wrong. You become the victim, really. You really become the victim if you argue that. And I'm not the only one who's done it. I've done it pretty loudly. I know of a couple court cases in California, but come on, in California, everybody smokes weed or knows someone who smokes weed. It's supposed to happen there. It doesn't even make news now. You know, people just, they dismiss their cases. If you really fight your case in California in a state court, they just dismiss your case. Because same thing, the same logic that I was saying that was happening to me when I was trying to get those certain arguments before you. So, once again, the jury nullification to me, I think, is a slam dunk on a mass level if the entire population starts understanding it. And it happens the same way that prohibition, with prohibition. I keep thinking you're going to have, like, you keep having these shows about marijuana and Sanjay Gupta shows. I keep thinking that sooner or later someone's going to get up there and start talking like, you know, it doesn't matter what guys like Christie says. It doesn't matter what, you know, this guy says. The American people, we the people, don't believe in the marijuana laws anymore. You know, how could they get a jury? How could you convict somebody for marijuana possession, especially with the definition of marijuana saying that marijuana has no medicinal value? It says it has no medicinal value, and 20 states have totally disregarded that, and they say it. You know, you get the state of New Jersey. The state of New Jersey is unique too. I got to tell you, I studied a few state laws. Let me tell you about California's laws. California still has its criminal marijuana laws. People think they don't. They have their criminal marijuana laws, but they've used their medical marijuana laws are exemptions to their criminal statute. Like, you still have the overall criminal statute, and then under Prop 215 rules, under statute like 1135-62, as an exemption to their criminal statutes. In New Jersey, we have our 2C criminal laws, and now, since 2010, we have our medical marijuana bill. And they're not connected at all. We have two entirely separate laws. One saying marijuana has no medical value and is therefore illegal. It's a 2C law. This is why you get prosecuted. And then you have this law, the medical marijuana law, where, you know, you can get your medical card, you can use marijuana, and you can get it, you can distribute it. In fact, the state is even authorized who can distribute it, you know? And there's nothing in between. So that's a clear legal due process violation. You can call it one law should void out the other law. And I can give you examples of that. There's people in here old enough to remember here in New Jersey, you had laws that say you couldn't make a right on red. Everybody remembers that. You couldn't make a right on red in Jersey. And then one year, the state passed its laws where you can make a right on red. They didn't specifically go out and repeal the law that said you couldn't make the right on red. This law came in afterwards and superseded that law. They didn't bind them together. They didn't make any connections to them, nothing. This law superseded that law. That's what my argument before the appellate court is, what happened here in New Jersey, that New Jersey inadvertently did it, but New Jersey inadvertently actually became the first state that legalized marijuana by accident on January 18, 2010, because we have our 2C laws that say marijuana is a Schedule I drug, marijuana is illegal, blah, 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 blah. And then we passed this other law that came into effect in January of 2010 that says all the opposites. I think this law should supersede that law and null and void that law, the 2C laws. And this is the argument before the New Jersey Appellate Court right now. This is one of the arguments. And actually, the Bloomsburg News actually last week did a pretty good interview with me and my lawyer about that. Again, I was presenting these quirky arguments before, and people laughed and giggled about them. But now I'm getting, you know, the 1%ers paying attention. That's what I think of the Bloomsburg News. That, you know, they're paying attention to it. I think there's a couple lawyers groups that are definitely paying attention to some of these arguments I've presented. Even the Governor Christie's been totally against out-of-state cards. People having out-of-state cards. Everyone's familiar with that, right? I think what happens is if New Jersey started allowing out-of-state cards, it would undermine New Jersey's failed program, and it would make it work. So of course he's against it. If you could just go to California, get a card, and fly back and forth and have your marijuana, there would be no reason to get into New Jersey's program. There would be no reason to spend $1,000 or whatever you spend and wait a year and all those type of things. So he's made it where you can't do it. Whereas part of my appeal again, that's what I'm arguing. One of the things I'm arguing is I had a California card, I have a California card, I have a medical condition, I flew to New Jersey. If I had Percocets and hydrocodone and that was my medicine, I came across into the New Jersey border, no one would say anything about it. But because I had marijuana, now somehow, like I was supposed to leave my marijuana at the border. My condition doesn't change when I cross the borders. Why should my treatment change when I cross the borders? So the appellate court's got to rule on this. And ruling on this, they have to now understand too, America's changed. There are some states, again, going to California, there are 50,000 people with medical marijuana cards, and some of them come here to go to New York or go to Philly or, you know, God forbid, come to the Garden State, you know? And the appellate court's got to put some type of rule in place, since we already see that Governor Christie's not going to do it. So we have to do it through the judicial branch with certain arguments. The religious argument is there. Being allowed to argue that the law is wrong is in my appeal. And I would like you, if you get a chance, go to my website, njweedman.com, and somewhere, there's a couple times on there, it's a link to the appeal. Just read it. These are the arguments that the appellate court is going to rule on one way or the other. And these are all, it's all new law. It's all new arguments. Most people, if you ever tried to argue any marijuana laws in New Jersey, most of them go back to State versus Tate. There's a case from 1986 where a guy that had MS argued that he used marijuana medicinally. At the time, the appellate court, in a 4-3 decision, which is close, a 4-3 decision said that, you know, they found him guilty. They upheld his conviction, so he lost. But in their dissent and in their opinion, they said that in the future, if the state endorses this medically, and if the person has a doctor who supports this, then he would be justified. They call it a medical necessity defense, is how the appellate court argued that out. And that was in the light of 1986. Now, again, fast forward 30 years, and now everyone knows that marijuana has medicinal value. Everyone knows that the law is wrong. But here in New Jersey, there hasn't been a court case that challenged the Tate decision. The Tate decision is actually the leading medical marijuana case in New Jersey. I think my case totally wipes out Tate in the fact that I had a medical marijuana card. My medical marijuana card is in my pocket now. It's from the state of California, but it's still a medical marijuana card. I have a condition that I could be legal here in the state of New Jersey. I have elected not to participate in New Jersey's program, but I think if I really wanted to, I could be accepted in New Jersey's program. And I have it. The state of New Jersey itself has legalized marijuana for medicinal reasons, has recognized it. So again, I think when the appellate court rules on that issue alone, I gotta win. 30 years ago, the appellate court in a 4-3 decision came close and even said under what conditions that this defense would work. Well, fast forward 30 years, I just presented them their exact arguments from 30 years ago. So I think I'm gonna win there too. And a win for me wouldn't just be a win for me, because I've always been advocating changing the law. And you know, to me, this is the Super Bowl. I feel like I've been an activist for 20 years, and I finally made it to the Super Bowl. You know, I finally got that appeal to the appellate court. I'm finally, who knows, if the state argues successfully, it might end up in the New Jersey Supreme Court, which again, Super Bowl, you know?
So can I get a question for you?
Yeah, sure.
What would the outcome be for people who have medical cards from other states then if you win your case? Would you be allowed to use your card from, say, California here legally?
That's what I think will happen.
Well, it could be argued in every court until the end of time.
No, it would become the law of the land. It would become the law of the state. If the appellate court rules that my card was valid here, then anybody can get a card and be valid here.
From anywhere. in the United States.
That's how I feel. Who knows how the appellate court's going to rule? But that's the argument that's presented, that I have a card, I have a doctor's note, and not only did I have a card from a doctor, I also had the official card from the state of California. You know, just like New Jersey's card, you know, from the Department of Health, but the state of California. So I have one of those too. And the other argument, sorry, I forgot to bring this argument up. There's a constitutional argument about that, and it's called the Full Faith and Fair Credit Act of the Constitution demands that states respect each other's acts. Like we have New Jersey Medical Marijuana Act. California has their Medical Marijuana Act. New Jersey should respect California's act. California actually respects everybody's act. Some states, I think out of the 20 states, I don't remember the number, I think it's 13 or 14 of them actually have reciprocity. They respect each other's cards. New Jersey doesn't.
Connecticut doesn't either.
Yeah, and that's where I think, yeah, it's the ones on the East Coast. They're the ones, the two, you know. That's where I think the
So
appeal.
California, I can go to California and,
Yep.
because I have a card in Connecticut, use it in California?
Yep.
Really?
Same thing with people in Arizona do it all the time. People in Nevada, same thing. They respect each other's cards there. I think Washington State and Oregon, I remember as one of them had an issue. I think it was Oregon had an issue that they didn't respect everybody's card either. But I think it's Montana doesn't. Michigan doesn't. There's a couple of them that don't, but more than half of them do. And you won't get prosecuted. You know, you might have an issue with the cop on the side of the road, but you won't get prosecuted later. And I think that argument will be successful here. But in my pretrial arguments, that's one of the things I argued, that through the Full Faith and Fair Act, Full Faith and Credit Act of the Constitution, New Jersey was obligated to respect my California card because it was issued by the state of California. And it was a similar act and the whole 9 yards, a bunch of details in there. And the judge in my case said, no problem. Now it's before the appellate court, and I think the appellate court is going to rule that way because the appellate court is more looking at legal arguments. The judge was still looking at me as Weedman, and I think the appellate court is going to look at these two legal arguments, and the legal argument is a constitutional argument. It has nothing to do with weed. It's like, does this state respect the rights of that state? It happens with licenses and marriages. We just experienced that in New Jersey with gay marriages and same-sex marriages. If you're married in California and you come to New Jersey, there was an issue. But it doesn't work the other way. California respects everybody else's rights. But these were the arguments that were presented by other courts that no, you can't make same-sex marriage legal because if you make it legal in New York, when that couple from New York come here, they're going to think they're married. And to be honest with you, they're right. Because the Full Faith and Fair Credit Act should make them legal. If you get married in San Diego, you come here, you're still married. You don't have to have 50 licenses. Well, the same thing should happen with marijuana. You shouldn't have to have 50 medical marijuana cards. You should be able to have one in one state and be legit. By profession, I'm a coast-to-coast truck driver. At one time, I had a license in New Jersey, I had a license in Arizona, and I had a license in Florida. At some point, the CDL rules came in and said, everybody, you're only allowed one license. You can only have one license no matter where you are. The same thing, I think, is ultimately going to happen with our marijuana cards, you know, as things evolve. You know, right now, half the states haven't even legalized it, you know, but as these evolve, you were going to say something?
I think that, you know, if you have to get a card, medical card from each state, could cause fraud too as well.
Yeah, it could.
It's like licenses and things like that, you know, car licenses.
That's why they mandate only one now. And the same thing with the medical marijuana cards. It has to get like that at some point. Otherwise, you'd have 50 different cards, 50 different rules. Look at New Jersey. And I love New Jersey. I do, I really do. I'm proudly a New Jerseyan. Wherever I go anywhere, I'm a New Jerseyan. But there's certain things about New Jersey, man, it's like, oh man, I'm embarrassed about. Our medical marijuana law is embarrassing. I don't even want to call it a medical marijuana law, you know? But, you know, we mandate certain things. You can't have more than 10% marijuana in your marijuana. You can't grow your own. You know, there's a few things about the state's laws. You got to pay a couple $100 to the state. You could be sitting on a list for a year and you still never get your marijuana. Okay, that's our law. Whereas you go somewhere else, you know, you don't have any of those issues. Their laws are better. And if you had a choice, a free market system with everything else, you just get your card somewhere else, and you know, and you should be protected when you come here. And ultimately, that's what I'm saying. Ultimately, it is going to happen. I'm hoping my court case, you know, helps it in that sense here. That's one of my arguments. But if anybody has any questions about that?
How about eliminating cars completely and just being 21 years old and treating it like alcohol is to this day? Since alcohol really was legalized for medicinal purposes at its prohibition. In
some states, that argument is already there. The western states, there are some people. That's what just happened in Colorado and Washington. Basically, they were like, the hell with all that medical shit, just make it all legal. You know, that's basically what's happening.
It's virtually identical to prohibition of alcohol. It became it as a medicine, which is hard to believe.
Right.
And yet here we are now. We even have to have cards.
Have you been out in California since they?
I was in California on Monday.
Colorado.
I go back and forth.
Colorado.
Well, not since legalization. I've been there before that. Well, actually, I did. Actually, I had a layover there. I hurried up and hung out with some potheads and ran back on the plane. But as far as actually hanging out in Denver, say, and going to the shops and stuff, I haven't done that. I did it before that. Before we were just medical shops. You know, that's a funny thing too. Their shops used to let you have visitors. So I went with a person who had a card and was like a visitor, you know, but you couldn't buy anything.
The conversation of recreational marijuana, I can never ever hear it in any of this, in anything. Why isn't that mentioned when the majority of people who smoke marijuana have nothing to do with medicinal purposes?
Well, it's getting there. It's getting there. I mean,
you hear in your travels discussions about this? I mean, what's the difference between coming home and smoking your short-term memory loss and hunger as opposed to killing pain and all these other more serious?
The crazy thing is, we live here in the East Coast. Most of us, you know, in our state, we don't have citizen initiatives. The only way you get something on the ballot is 2/3 of the state Senate put it there, 2/3 of the state Assembly vote to put it there, or the governor puts it there. When out west, there's a certain percentage of registered voters you need to sign a petition to get something on. You can't do that here. That's why you have states like California had Proposition 200 or 215, or Arizona had Proposition 200. Washington State had Initiative 504. And I say all that because she said there is a petition right now in California. It's called Make Marijuana Like Wine. Like, that's the name of the petition. Like, you can Google that. And I don't know if it's going to pass. They don't have enough money behind them to go statewide. They're basically in the San Francisco and Northern California area, the petitioners. But they're trying to get it on the ballot statewide, and that's what it's actually called. And I think if we could do that in New Jersey, it would pass. If we were allowed to have citizen initiatives in New Jersey, which is actually I think it's very good. One of the bills that was just presented actually was asking for that. I don't know if you know that. I wish I had a note on that one. Who's been following all the medical? Which bill was that? There was one.
Duciara's bill.
That's right.
Duciara.
And his bill was saying he had to get it through the Senate first, but that was what he said. If the Senate agrees with it, the agreement was to allow the people a referendum, allow the people to do it.
It would need Ms. Christie's approval before it could go to the voters.
Right. Yeah. So again, another blockage.
Not the regulate scheme either, just to criminalize the ends.
Right. Well, that sounds good until we get to Christie's blockage again. You know, he's there to block it. And you know what? And that just comes because of our form of government here. That a governor of a lot of East Coast states is a very powerful person. Almost every law comes across their desk. They become the powerful guy, the titan or the Till of the Hun, and he's our Till of the Hun. Like, it's not happening with him there. Whereas you go to some of the states out west, you don't even need the governor. Who cares? You get 50,000 people and we'll sign a petition and we'll get it on the ballot and, let the voters decide. So if I was to ever have power in New Jersey, that's the only thing I would do. I'd be like, make it a citizen initiative state. If I could change one thing in New Jersey, that's what I would change. Make it a citizen initiative state. I never hear any of the politicians complaining either. The Democrats and Republicans don't complain about that because they got all the power. It's all tied up in them. You start making citizen initiatives, man, a little guy, I think you can imagine a libertarian allowed to get run loose in New Jersey.
You might let you pump your own gas.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know, there'd be guns everywhere too, though. I shouldn't have said that one. All right.
Other states that have done that. The West Coast, more West Coast states they allow ballot initiatives.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
But as incrementally as we go on in time, they make laws, the Republicans and Democrats and lawmakers against the people that they supposedly represent.
Yep, and it's very obvious. Yeah, it's very obvious on the East Coast. On the East Coast, on the West Coast, the politicians on the West Coast actually have to deal with the people because of that. Because if they don't like, look what just happened in Colorado. I happen to be one of these guys that I'm for gun rights. So, but what happened in Colorado is actually a case in democracy. I'm actually for democracy too. Whereas there was 2 or 3 politicians who supported gun rights, and the local people got together and they started a repeal process, put it on the ballot, and they removed like 3 politicians that supported gun rights. And that would work in Colorado. I don't know if it would work here, but just the fact that that's democracy. That's real democracy, We don't have real democracy in New Jersey. We got, obstructionist Christie here. Anyway, tomorrow I would hope we might hear some of the same stuff, but I'll be more prepared for a discussion on some legal aspects, some legal arguments I think everyone should know. I did come with some paperwork. I was saving it for tomorrow. So if you're here tomorrow, please listen to what I have to say tomorrow. All right. Until then, fuck the law, smoke it anyway.